Got my neighbor's Saturn here. It's a new car that they just got for free. It's going to be their daughter's first car. She just got her driver's license or her permit, whatever it is. So a family member gave it to them for free. It's a 2002 Saturn, like a SL. They want me to look it over and just start telling them what it needs. So first of all, I noticed it has misfires while running. Sometimes the engine stumbles, it wants to turn off. The whole brake system needs to get revamped. I got to the first corner and this thing did not want to stop. You got to push the pedal into the ground just to get it to stop. We are at about 150,000 miles on it. So that's nothing for a Saturn. Anyways, I went ahead and pulled the fuse for the injectors, and let's listen to the engine while it's cranking. Okay, sounds pretty consistent to me. Let me put my scanner on it. We'll see if it has misfires. It definitely feels like it. And I'm sure this thing's just gonna need a overall tune-up. And look at this thing, there's a crack on the windshield. Someone commented that every car I get in this garage has a cracked windshield, and that's about it. That just sums up my whole channel. It's their child's first car, and I know them well. They're friends of mine, so I'm sure they want the car as safe as possible. So basically, not only are we changing things that need to be changed, but I'm also going to recommend changing things that should just be done out of maintenance. So I hope that makes sense. And some of these things aren't really that they're necessarily like bad and horrible and need to be changed out immediately. So what's on my list so far is front right lower control arm, both outer tie rods, both front stabilizer links, front pads, front rotors, rear drums, the complete assembly. I think that's just about it for the suspension right now. Here goes the condition of the brakes. You can see why this car does not want to stop. And this is the lower control arm that's bad. It's got a ton of play in that lower ball joint. And the parts for these cars is so cheap. Like, sure, you can knock out those rivets right there and just put a new ball joint in it. But, you know, the parts are just dirt cheap. Change the freaking arm, you know what I mean? And that way you get new bushings back here as well. The first thing I noticed is when I went to jack up the car, I put my jack right here. For some reason, I didn't really catch all of this mess. Anyways, I started jacking up the car and I started hearing this metal cracking noise, which wasn't good, so I backed off. And sure enough, the subframe is like rotted away right here, so you definitely don't want to try lifting from the front. It's why I'm lifting on the sides. So you guys can probably hear how crappy it's running. Here goes our codes. So we have a cylinder 4 misfire and a near stall code. That light is on because I checked the coolant reservoir and it's completely empty. So I might have to start looking around for a coolant leak. But I'm not gonna really dig into this for a misfire case because it's gonna get a ton of parts just thrown at it out of just pure maintenance. So I'm not gonna worry about this right now. I'm not gonna try to dig into it and find out exactly what it is. The reason why I was cranking engine over is because I wanted to make sure it wasn't engine mechanical related, and it doesn't sound like it. The engine sounds like it's creating compression just fine. So this misfire is most likely something else, whether it's ignition related or a fuel injector, whatever. But we'll worry about that later on. Right now I'm just trying to put together a quick list of what we're gonna order for this car. So I pulled up some data right here so we could see our misfire, and it's very clear. Cylinder 4 is just misfiring like crazy. It's almost like a dead miss. Everything else seems to be okay. What I found interesting is we don't have a PID for engine coolant temperature. You can see it just says NA. By the way, the fans are running. As soon as you turn the car on, the fans are running, and this probably has something to do with that. So I noticed the wire is going to the ignition module thingamajiggle right here. Someone's been messing around inside of here. I don't know what's going on here, but you can see a cut wire right there. Don't know what was spliced into this, but once we start digging into this, who knows, there might be some corrosion on that wire, and who knows, maybe that wire may feed cylinder 4. Don't know. Anyway, I decided to put some water right here in the reservoir. It's hot out here. We're like summertime, so water's not an issue right now. It's all gonna get drained out anyway. The point of this is so that I could pressure test the system, see if we have a leak somewhere. And also, now that it's filled, I'm gonna go go inside the car and we'll see if that little light on the dash turned off to make sure that the sensor inside of here is working. So that light that was once right there immediately turned off, so we know the sensor inside of that reservoir works, so that's a good thing. All right, so I got my pressure gauge on it, and we are definitely losing pressure, very slowly though, but I can hear something over here. Not sure where it's coming from. Oh, right here. Here's what I'm hearing. See that little bubbling action going on? If that's the only leak we have in the system, I'll take it. So from underneath the car, I could actually see another leak. Nothing major, but I do see something dripping. And if we come from the top right here, let me see if I can get you guys the right angle. Right there, see that wet spot? So that's dripping from up here off of this coolant hose, this one. So it's dripping down onto the transmission and then dripping off the transmission from the bottom. So we have that small leak up there and the coolant hose that goes to the heater core. All right, so it's a few days later, we are back with the Saturn. When I first started up, obviously it wasn't running good. It has a misfire, scanner says on cylinder 4, and then the car shut off on me and I couldn't get it to start up for a good maybe 10 minutes. Finally started up after I came. Honestly, the only thing I checked is I came out here, pressed the Schrader valve on the fuel, and we had fuel come out, so I knew that wasn't the issue. Then I just kind of messed with this connector right here, and after messing with the connector, the car started right up. And now it starts up every single time here at the garage, but after 5 minutes or so, it shuts off consistently, and when it is running, the engine's running like crap. It's clearly a dead miss on cylinder 4, and the scan data was showing that dead miss on cylinder 4. I checked the injectors as far as the current ramps, and I even went straight for injector number 4 because you could get to it right here, and the waveforms for injector number 4, everything looks normal. So I'm really suspecting this is a ignition issue, but since this car is kind of difficult to get to, you see how everything is like bolted down in place and you can't, I mean, it's just a little bit more difficult to test. But honestly, the easiest method here is to just play Swaptronics, because we have my mom's HHR right there, and they both have the same exact engine in them. So what I'm going to do is take out this complete ignition module and this whole piece right here out of the HHR, and we'll put it on the Saturn, and let's see if it fixes our misfire. Entire assembly off of the HHR, put it on the Saturn, and it's running much better, but I could still hear a misfire, but it's nowhere near as bad as it was before. But here's the thing, now we have a misfire in cylinder 1 instead of cylinder 4. And what's funny is my mom's car has been sitting for like over a month, right? So I went to go turn it on right now, and it turned on, but all of a sudden it has a misfire. And I'm like, huh, I didn't have a misfire before. So just from this thing sitting, it's developed a misfire, right? And I knew that when I was pulling it in right now. And I put that piece on this car now. So now this one's misfiring, but on a different cylinder, but it's running a lot better. So that tells me both of these cars have the same part that are bad. Later on, I figured out that the HHR was actually misfiring due to low fuel pressure from having a gasoline leak. It had nothing to do with the ignition system. So the coils that we took off of the HHR we put on the Saturn, they were 100% functional and working. And that just tells me that we still have a misfire on the Saturn. We know for sure that it is ignition related on this Saturn, and it's just going to need a complete new ignition assembly. I don't know what to call that thing. And just so we're clear, the reason why I'm saying it needs an entire ignition assembly is because even though we have a misfire in cylinder 1 right now, just by swapping over the coils from the HHR over to the Saturn, you can see it completely fixed our misfires on cylinder 4. It's a done deal. It needs an ignition coil because it fixed one of our problems, and basically we have more than one problem here causing misfires. Alright, so I put the original module back on this car, and look at that. There goes our misfire back on cylinder number 4 once again. And then the random little misfires you see on like cylinder 2, I would not pay any attention to that. That's probably just like side effects of cylinder 4 misfiring so bad. Alright, so this one has a misfire on cylinder 1. This one has a misfire on cylinder 4. You know, we could combine both of these and make one of them that actually works. You know, so if we grab this and if we put it right on top just like that, and then you hold both of these two things together at the same time. Okay, let's get in closely. You can look at this. Get out of here. What do you think I am, freaking Captain Planet? What am I gonna do? Combine our powers. Cracked windshields. Only change my brake pads. Just needs an O2 sensor. Bad Cadillac converters. With our powers combined, we get Captain Piece of Crap. It's now time to do the rear drum brakes, and with the wheel off of the ground, this wheel does not want to turn. If I get both my hands on it at the same time, I could force it and get the wheel to spin a little bit, but it should be able to spin freely. And the emergency brake or the hand brake is not engaged. In fact, it doesn't even want to move. It seems like rock solid. Nobody ever uses these things, so they just kind of rot away and rust in place, and that's what's going on here. And that also probably explains why the brake pedal feels like crap. Like I said, I did the front brakes like you guys saw already, but after taking it out for a test drive, it doesn't feel great. The pedal feels very hard to press, like you're pushing up against just like a brick wall. Okay, so this thing went way easier than I expected. With some penetrating fluid and just using some pry bars, I was able to like walk the drum off. Not really as big as I thought it was gonna be, but so the wheel bearing spins freely. So here's what I got, a new drum, and honestly the drum that's on here doesn't look too bad. It's almost like someone replaced it not so long ago, but we have the new parts already. It makes no sense in sending them back because we bought everything online, so it's just gonna get all new parts on it. And this is the way the owner wants it anyway. They'd rather have new parts on it. So here's a hardware kit for the rear drums, and we got some new shoes right here. Unfortunately, we don't have that main screw like I said, but it's not a big issue. I'll get it off. We'll try to free it up, clean all the rust off of it, and make it look pretty. So now I could go ahead and clean out the inside of the drum, and we'll fit it on here and adjust everything so it's right. So I got all of this put back together. I got the shoes adjusted right where I want them to be. So let's go ahead, start up the car. I'm not gonna pull your leg. I already tried this. I'll tell you right now, the pedal already feels better. It feels like there's actually some travel in the pedal, how there should be. It doesn't feel like as soon as you press it, you're up against a brick wall. See, now we got some travel in the pedal. And that's only with doing one side. I still have to do the other side, but it's already an improvement. Let's go ahead and test the brakes. I don't have much space to move. I got the CRX in front of me. I got my mom's HHR behind me. Let's hope that these brakes work, because if they don't, one of these cars is gonna end up getting hit. Sometimes you gotta live life on the edge. You know what? Let's go back first. The HHR is back there. Alright, so I'm happy with it. Tomorrow I'll knock out the other side. Finally getting around to doing the coolant leaks on the Saturn. As you can see, I replaced this little hose right here, put some new clamps on it, and now I'm replacing the two hoses that go to the heater core back there. And what a freaking nightmare they were to get off. This whole quick connect system is just trash, and it's just a freaking nightmare. You can see I pretty much had to destroy the little retaining tabs at the end of here just to get these things off. Thankfully they go on a lot easier than they come off. At least I hope so. So here goes our new parts right here, all OEM parts of course. So let's see how well it fits. We got the first hose on the heater core back there, and it was a freaking nightmare to get that thing on. Jeez, what a shitty design, GM. Anyway, the first one is on, and I think I'm gonna have more luck with the second one, only because, you know, you learned a little tricks about it. So this hose right here, you can see it comes with a clamp already on it. Let's go ahead and remove the old clamp. Now this fitting on the engine side had a ton of rust on it right here, so you got to make sure you clean that up. And I came in here with my Dremel with a small wire wheel on it, and just go ahead and clean up that corrosion before you put the new hose on it. You know, honestly, I don't understand why I don't see more YouTube videos with people utilizing the Dremel, a cordless one, while working on cars. This thing has saved my ass so many times, it's not even funny. As far as I'm concerned, you need one of these. This should be a tool in your toolbox, no different from having a ratchet or a socket. it's just, it's one of those things that you won't use often, but when you need it to fit in tight places and to clean up things, this is your best friend. I'm not even exaggerating. So now that I got this pipe relatively clean, I got most of the corrosion off of it, feels nice and smooth all the way around. You could go ahead and put this hose on it, and we'll pretty much repeat the same process for the other hose. So here I have the second hose, and one thing that I found that you're never gonna get this thing installed if you don't push it in all the way. Okay, so I'm gonna try to get you guys a shot of this. You see right there, you see that little metal lip back there? This thing right here, that metal lip corresponds on the new piece with that groove that's cut inside of there. Hopefully you can see that groove that's back there. It's about right there, right where my fingernail is. So that metal piece on the pipe has to fall into the groove inside of this plastic right there. And you're gonna see these green things on here. Just get rid of them. So here's the thing, someone's been in here and they've replaced these before, because not only did I still find these green things attached to the original ones, but this collar, once it's locked in place, this collar is supposed to slide forward, and that's what prevents this thing from falling off. Okay, well, this thing was never slid forward. This collar was pushed back, and the push back position is the way you would push it in order to remove it. So that tells me someone's been in here, someone's replaced these before, and they just didn't install these things correctly. There's only one little O-ring inside of here that is sealing. You see it back there? You don't want to go in dry. So what I'm using is a silicone lubricant, and just really, I'm not spraying inside the tube, just on the outside. And the same thing right here, you want to spray that O-ring and make sure everything's lubricated before you try to slide it on, because the worst you can do is tear your new O-ring. Then guess what? You're gonna be buying a new part. I got the other tube in place. It's locked in on that side. And here's another example. See, this tube right here needs to be cleaned up from the corrosion. So again, just come in here with the Dremel. I'll show you to use a wire brush, but you'll kind of be here all day and you're not going to get as good of a result. Go ahead and spray it down with some silicone lube right now. It cleans it off and it lubricates it. So the new hose is just going to slide right over. Just like that. And then they got this blue retainer clip, which is supposed to just yank it off, and it engages the clamp. Just like that. And that's it. Both of them are in place. Honestly, that's way harder than it has to be. So all I have to do is remove this divider bracket, whatever the heck you want to call it, and install it on new ones. So I have to change the cabin air filter. I was looking underneath the dash. I thought it might have been inside of there like most cars have it, but this one's actually out here. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean up all this mess right here before we put the new filter in. And there we go. Here goes the old one. Definitely not the worst filter I've seen, but still it's pretty nasty. Alright, so it's a few days later. It's actually kind of raining today, but the new ignition module assembly thing has come in. So let's go ahead and remove this one. We'll put the new one on and see if it takes care of all of our misfires. We get the new one installed, looking all nice and shiny. It's all plugged in. Let's go ahead and start it up. Now this thing, when I pulled it in just about 5 minutes ago, it sounded horrible. It sounded like a bad diesel car, like it was running on 2 cylinders. So let's see how it runs now. I could already tell you that it's firing on all 4. That's it, guys. Steering wheel is nice and smooth. The engine is definitely firing on all 4. Alright, so that's one problem knocked off the list. The coolant lines. I've been checking them since I put them on a few days ago, and no leaks, so that's looking pretty good. So I'm all taking the Saturn for a test drive. This is the first time I'm actually really driving it, because before, with the misfires being so bad, the engine would just randomly shut off, and it was really unreliable to the point where it was just sketchy even taking it around the block once, because you didn't know when it was going to leave you stranded. but it seems to be running nice and smooth to the point where I had no problem. I've had enough confidence in it this time to actually drive it, and so far so good. I've been driving around the block and it hasn't skipped a beat, so really happy to see that. I still have not changed the rear left drum brake assembly, so I still got to put the new drum on it and the shoes and all that stuff, but the brakes have already improved massively. I'm telling you, this thing did not want to stop. It was like super scary coming up to a stop sign, and just by doing the front brakes and the rear right side, there's already a big improvement, but I still have that one to do. Okay, so I spoke a little bit too soon. Looking at the misfire counters here, you can see we have misfires on cylinder 1. It's not as bad, nowhere near as bad as the way it came in when it was misfiring on cylinder 4. But this is really interesting because with the old ignition coil, let's just call it the ignition coil, the whole assembly, okay, we had absolutely no misfires on cylinder 1 and everything was on cylinder 4. Then we put my mom's ignition coil out of the HHR on it, and we had misfires on cylinder 1 but nothing on cylinder 4. And now with the new part, kind of like the same thing. Misfire on cylinder 1 only, but cylinder 4 is now good. Okay, so maybe the part that came off of my mom's car is in still working condition, and there's something else causing this misfire in cylinder 1. But why do we not have the misfire in cylinder 1 when this thing has the original ignition coil in it? That's interesting. One thing I noticed is the misfire only really feels like it's there at idle, because when I'm driving this thing around the block, like I just came from my test drive, it drove absolutely perfect. You couldn't even feel it misfiring or anything under load. But while it's idling, let's see, 1800 RPM, and you can see our amount of misfires has drastically decreased. It's not running as good as it could be running, so we still have some more digging to do and see what's going on here. What I did was I swapped the spark plugs around for cylinders 1 and 2, and the misfire did not change, it's still on 1. And I also swapped around the spark plug boots on the coil, just in case. I know it's not that, but just in case. And again, the misfire did not change. We still have a misfire on cylinder 1. The misfire on 4 is completely gone. So looking at the fuel trims here, you can see we have a little bit of negative fuel trim. So what I'm going to do now is let's start checking these fuel injectors and see if maybe we have a leaking fuel injector. Who knows? But I definitely at this point don't think it's ignition related. Alright, so I did a injector balance test using my fuel pressure gauge, and all 4 injectors pretty much checked out the same, so I'm not really seeing an issue there. I put the scope on number 1 injector, and this is our waveform. Turn my light off, or probably not. Okay, there we go. Looks pretty good. I'm not seeing any issues with it. Alright, so the injector for cylinder 1 looks like it's checking out fine. We're not losing fuel pressure on it. But one thing I did notice, and the whole time I was working here, is I could hear what sounds like a vacuum leak. And the closer I put my ear, so right in this area where cylinder 1 is at and fuel injection, or the runner for cylinder number 1 is at, that's where I could really hear what sounds like a vacuum leak. So what I'm going to do is, let's go ahead and get this out of here. Let's unplug the scope real fast. And I just have some water right here inside of this bottle. It's just a little bit of soapy water, as you can see. Let's start spraying in that area right where runner number 1 is. So I know you guys can't hear this, it's not going to pick up on camera, but I could definitely hear when I hit the right spot. I could hear like the tone of the engine change. So what I want to do now is I'm going to let the engine cool off, and maybe we could do a smoke test on the intake system and see if we see a leak. Alright guys, so I'm not even gonna lie to you. That day was raining out here and I thought I heard a vacuum leak on the intake manifold. That was like 3 days ago, and I completely forgot that I was gonna check for a vacuum leak, and it just popped into my head right now. So I pulled out the smoke machine, I got everything connected, and you can see it's been connected for about a minute. and it's still showing a large leak. You can see the float is all the way up top. I got it plugged in right here, going right into the valve cover, which should make its way into the intake system. And I need to get my light, but I could tell you guys right now, I'm already seeing smoke come out of here, right where the intake manifold meets up to the head. You know what's funny is I noticed like there's a tiny bit that scared the hell out of me. I'm not even gonna lie. This is absolutely weird to me. I don't know if it's normal, but there's actually smoke coming right out of this center. Let's see if you guys can see that. See that? Is that a bad sensor or is that normal? I have no idea. Anyway, the more we block off, the more smoke we are starting to see come out from this intake manifold right where it meets up against the head. See all that? Yeah, it's very obvious now. And you know what's funny is that sure there is some leak going on over here, not much, just like little things, but the majority of the leak is right here, right by cylinder number 1. I'm sure you guys can see that, okay? You know, we get a little bit on this side, but most of it is all right here. So this misfire right here is enough to make anyone go crazy, and you could definitely shoot the parts cannon at it. Now, I don't consider buying one of these, shooting the parts cannon at it, because it did fix our cylinder number 4 misfire. So the number 4 misfire was definitely ignition related. And number 1 misfire, which I got my fingers crossed, but it's kind of like process of elimination. We kind of checked everything else. So it has to be this vacuum leak right here that's really close to cylinder 1. And that kind of explains why it runs fine once the RPM are up. Because a misfire, I mean a vacuum leak, is only really present at idle. Once you're on the throttle, any vacuum leak kind of disappears, kinda. I'll let the owner know what needs to get done and let's see if they want to do it. For now, let me go ahead and knock out the rear drums on this side because I still haven't done it. It's the last thing I have to do. What I noticed is on the rear right side, the drum looked like it was relatively new. And on the rear left side, that's not the case. This thing looks pretty rusty and crusty. And it definitely looks like it's been on here longer than the rear right side. I've seen a few things here that just aren't right. This clip right here that I got my finger on, it's actually upside down, or actually this whole rod right here is a full 180 degree out, because there are little teeth right there that should line up with an indentation on the rod, and it's actually on the other side. So this thing is completely flipped around the wrong way. And then I noticed we are missing the spring that goes from here to here. So as you can see the problem here, look at this. This is just flopping around inside of here. I have no idea where that spring is at, but it's missing. We have a new one anyway. So clear signs that someone's been inside of here. And here goes that notch I was talking about. So you can see there's like little teeth right here on this washer, and it corresponds with the notch that's on this rod right here. And they are supposed to fall into place just like that. All right, so I'm pretty much all done here. You can see everything is in place how it should be. I had to reuse the old spring that goes right here on top, because the new one, when I tried to stretch it to hook onto here, this thing just pretty much deformed out of place. And I tried 2 times and like the spring just flung out and it hit me 2 times in the hand, and I'm like, you know what, I'm done with this, it's just hurting me. So I grabbed the original part and it went right on without any issues. All right, so that's it. Got the shoes all adjusted, new drum is on it. Sprayed some CRC on the hub like I showed you guys, and a little bit right there you can see where it's like yellow. And that's it. We're gonna go ahead. I already tested the brake pedal. Pedal feels good, so we're gonna go ahead and put the wheel on it, take it out for a test drive. So after doing all the brakes on the car, the pedal feels much better. I don't feel like I have to push the pedal into a brick wall just to get it to stop. And so I'm happy with the way the brakes turned out. We are back with this Saturn, and we have brand new intake manifold gaskets where the manifold meets up against the head. As you can see, I got the intake manifold off, and look how dirty all this stuff is. Here's the manifold. So when it's sitting on the car, in this direction. This is the side that was leaking, and well, that we saw with the smoke machine. And if we look closely, it's something I just noticed right now as well. You can see the gasket, right, how it's all one continuous piece. They're all connected. See how the gasket loops around here, comes around, but you get right here and look at this. This gasket is pretty much missing. There's a giant hole right here. That's a giant vacuum leak on this one cylinder. That's why it's misfiring, guys. So it's really nice to see this confirmation, and just you could visually see where the part is bad and how changing this gasket is gonna fix our random misfire, the one that's only at idle. So it all makes sense, right? So now it's time to go ahead and clean up all of this, put the new gasket on it, and clean up all of this mess right here. As you can see, I am pretty much done cleaning. All of that looks pretty good. Cleaned up this side of the intake manifold as best as I can. We got the brand new gasket in place. I got the intake manifold on, and nice thing is that the gasket kit included a new gasket for the throttle body. So as you can see, I got that replaced already. All the injectors are plugged in, and just working my way to the finish line here. All right, so I'm all done. Everything looks like it's put back together. I double checked everything and hopefully didn't miss anything. Anyway, let's go ahead for our first startup. All right, fingers crossed. All right, started right up. I don't feel any misfires. The engine is like super smooth. Let's let it come off of this high idle. And I'll go ahead and check that service engine light soon. So it's been a few minutes. Car's still running. You can see we're at about 800 RPM, and super smooth, no misfires, no shaking. It's running really good. Here's the codes. We got a cylinder 1 misfire and engine coolant temperature circuit high. Now these are the codes that were here before I started working on the car, so I'm gonna go ahead and clear these. I actually have a brand new AC Delco coolant temperature sensor here, and I still have to pop that on. So I'm gonna clear these codes. I'll pop that sensor on, and then we'll take this thing out for a test drive. But so far, good results. It looks like it's fixed. That misfire we had only at idle because of the vacuum leak is gone. Alright, so I've been test driving it for a few minutes now, and it's honestly like butter smooth. Not a single hiccup at all, not a single misfire. Even when you come to a stop sign where the RPMs go down to just idling, super smooth, no issues at all. After all this time me working on it, it's finally done. The owner can pick it up and it'll be all set. It's running nice and smooth, no more misfires. The brakes feel good. There's absolutely nothing dripping or leaking. Everything is really good. What you see underneath the car right now is from when I removed that temperature sensor right now, and a little bit of coolant came out, but the car itself is not dripping anything. So yeah, it's pretty much all set. Clear the check engine lights. There shouldn't be any other check engine lights because every code that we have, all of that got addressed. So this Saturn is pretty much all set. So another Saturn lives to die another day. The girl actually really likes her Saturn, and I'm happy she likes it. It's a good little car. I like these cars, and I'm glad I was able to fix it up. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching.